Welcome, dear friends, to another video. So today we're going to talk about how to learn a song kind of from a beginner perspective. I've done other videos about this. I think I did one a year or two ago on Blue Bossa. And today we're going to pick another tune a little bit more complicated because Blue Bossa was relatively simple. Today we're going to talk about Girl from Ipanema. And what I'm going to show you here doesn't apply to just Girl from Ipanema. I want you to, I guess, carry this way of thinking onto other songs. But before we get started, YouTube and the whole online thing is one of my main sources of income. So if you could please like, subscribe, leave a comment, like a nice comment, it makes such a huge difference. And if you want to leave a nasty comment, I know some of you do, fair enough. And what else am I going to say? Oh, and if you do want to support me financially, I don't have Patreon, but you can go on SoundSlice, buy some courses. I'm going to refer to some of my courses here. Namely, on SoundSlice, I have a course on phrasing, jazz phrasing. All right, this is a bossa tune, but I talk about it from the context of how phrasing and which rhythms were used in the early days of jazz and how it influenced the jazz of today. So you can check that out. It's very, very cool. And I have another course that's on developing bebop lines. I show tons of licks, but it's not about the licks. It's about how to understand how these licks work, how they are constructed, and how they are idiomatic to the bebop style. So check those courses out. I have a harmony course as well, Gypsy jazz courses. And finally, you can check out stuff on DC Music School. So lots of things if you want to support me. And if you don't, totally fine. Just leaving a comment or liking will be good enough. All right, let's get started. The first thing I need to address is the accompaniment and the comping. So this is a bossa nova tune. And I gotta admit, I'm not a bossa nova expert. But I do think there's a distinction to be made. Having spoken to actual Brazilian jazz musicians, they always say that, of course, in Brazil they have, quote unquote, the real way of playing. Well, not quote unquote, the real way of playing. But in a jazz context, it can be something a little bit more flexible. With that said, I think accompaniment is such a huge topic. It's a very important one. You should definitely learn how to accompany the song, a basic accompaniment. You should learn the chords and everything. But it's such a big topic that I'd rather leave that topic for another time. Today, we're mainly talking about improvisation and harmonic interpretation. And like I said, the song Girl from Ipanema itself is not the actual focus of this video. We're just using this song to demonstrate the points that I want to demonstrate. I specifically chose this song because one day, I think a few years ago, I remember reading on Facebook, some guy wrote a comment on some person's video, maybe playing Girl from Ipanema. And it was such a strange comment. He was saying, the B section is incorrectly analyzed. It's actually supposed to be F sharp Lydian. I was like, what? And I was wondering, where did this guy come up with such a thing? Until one day, I stumbled upon an article on the internet, and the guy had copied what was written in that article. In that article, a seemingly professional musician, don't know how he plays, talks about how everyone is incorrectly analyzing this song, Girl from Ipanema. And that's what I want to talk about here. Harmonic interpretation. See, one thing that's very important about jazz harmony, in my opinion, well, not in my opinion, it's a fact, is that it's all about how you choose to interpret the harmonies. And you can interpret them in so many different ways. And especially nowadays, there are people doing some really crazy things with harmony that's way beyond the scope of what I want to talk about here. But it's not about this is the way and the only way. That's not right. This can be easily proven by checking out recordings of all the great improvisers. If you believe Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Django Reinhardt, Wes Montgomery, Joe Pass, etc., if you believe those people are great improvisers, then what they are doing is correct. And if you learn jazz the way I learned, so for those of you who don't know, I did go to music school. I got a degree in classical music theory. But to learn to play jazz, I actually learned that through recordings. I learned it by ear. I learned it through first the Gypsy community, playing the music of Django Reinhardt, and then exploring like lots of recordings. I've transcribed or analyzed well over 1,000 jazz solos. It's insane, but I've done that work. And I've learned a lot from actually exploring the music rather than just like repeating what other people have said. So let's talk about the chords to Girl from Ipanema. The way most charts will write the chords for the A section is kind of the backing track that I used. Says F major, and then G7, and then G minor, and then it would usually say G flat 9, back to F, and then G flat 9. But if you check really, really early recordings of this tune, that does happen. But another thing that happens is F, then G7, then G minor, C7. And I'm going to leave the C7 empty. I'm just going to play the root, the flat 7 and the third, leaving the fifth or any alterations empty so that it's open to interpretation. And back to F. And at the turnaround, lots of things can happen. In fact, in one of the early recordings, they did I think it was the very first recording. It would be in the key of D flat, but they have this turnaround that's really, really beautiful. I copied it in my solo. Isn't that beautiful? So this turnaround is thinking. A minor, to D7 with this, I guess, flat 5 or sharp 11, however you want to call it. G minor, and the same thing. C7 sharp 11 or flat 5. The name isn't so important. So this leads to the topic of harmonic direction, harmonic interpretation. Harmonic direction is a term that I personally came up with. People call it like functional harmony or whatever. But it's this whole idea where it's less about the exact chord that's written on the sheet music, but more about where you are going. And this is how most jazz improvisers, the great jazz improvisers in those days, and still today, improvise. That's why you can have a rhythm section playing a particular set of chords, perhaps what's written on the sheet music, but the improviser chooses to play to superimpose other harmonies. Some of these harmonies might be very, very closely related to what was written. Some of it can be really far off, and it's like a huge spectrum. And this is the key to jazz interpretation. Because if everything were actually set in stone, that over this chord you can only play this scale, then jazz music would be very, very, very limited. So the next thing I want to say, having checked out a few articles or even YouTube videos of teachers teaching this song, again, the information is not incorrect, but sometimes the way they talk, the way they teach, it almost seems that everything is set in stone, or that it's exactly this way, the way the old masters were improvising, when it's actually not true. It could be true for some people, but other people may have other ways, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. So in these articles, they talk about which scales to use, how to analyze. All right, so you have F Ionian, and then you have, in that same article that person was saying everyone was analyzing things wrong, they say, all right, G7 Mixolydian, but it's actually not Mixolydian, it's supposed to be Lydian flat 7. It can be either or. We're going to talk about that later. It comes down to the question of scales. And for those of you who are new to my channel, I suggest you watch many of my previous videos because I'm repeating a lot of the same things and I don't want to repeat the exact same thing again. But the whole idea of playing scales in jazz music is a bit of a complicated topic because it depends on the sound that you're going for. If you're going for something a little bit more contemporary, a little bit more modern, then the scale, the way of thinking in terms of scale, the way a lot of people are teaching might be appropriate. But if you're going for something a little bit older, like in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, and still even today, but really especially though back in those days, the bebop, the swing era, it is less about scales and more about vocabulary, idiomatic vocabulary using various devices. Namely, if I had to really put a label to things, it's thinking in terms of the harmony. And then the harmony, how do you decorate the harmony? Through enclosures, ornaments, and then which substitutions do you use? And from all that, of course, scales and arpeggios will definitely be played, but the thought process is not is not scales or arpeggios. It's really voice leading and vocabulary. Now, you don't necessarily want to play like the old masters. That's totally fine. You might want to create something totally new, and that's totally fine. There are a lot of great modern jazz players who don't play in the old way, and that's totally fine. So it's up to you to decide what you want to go for. But the important thing, though, is even if you choose to play scales and arpeggios, you don't want to just play scales and up and down randomly without any coherence. So coherence is one of the topics I want to talk about here, and it's a subjective one, of course. But I feel a lot of people are just playing patterns because it's what they know. They don't really hear anything. And it's kind of a chicken and egg question. How do you train yourself to be able to hear stuff? Well, for me, because I'm into the old style, I spent so much time listening to the old players and figuring out what they were doing, thinking about them. At one point, it activated a part of my brain where it's kind of like learning a language. I just intuitively know the meaning and how to use it. If you were to give me an F major chord, for instance, and this is my starting note in my solo, I can already hear in advance various things that I could play. Da 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 da, or da 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 da, do da da da. And this is because I spent so much time listening to a lot of music, not just jazz, just music in general, in activating this part of my brain that's trying to make sense of it, not necessarily in theoretical terms. So what I just did here, that was Oh Wind the Saints, which I just pulled out of nowhere. I've played the song before, but I was doing it just by ear because I hear it in my head and I know how to transfer it to my fingers, to my instrument. So that's something you have to find a way to develop on your own. If you want to play what you hear, this is what you got to do. And for me, I did that from learning a lot of vocabulary. Just back in the day, when I ever heard something that was seemingly interesting, I would grab my instrument and figure out what it was and try to make sense of it. So if I figure out just the notes, I try to understand how it relates to the harmonic context. For example, that's actually a classical guitar piece from, I think, Tarrega. It's the telephone thing, right? But it's over an A major chord. You can argue it's E7. A major. Oh, I do want to say one thing that's very, very important. I have a book coming out. It was supposed to come out this month. There were some issues with the publishing company, and it's a little bit delayed, so I don't know when it's going to be released. The book is complete, but it talks about how to visualize the fingerboard if you play jazz or if you're an improvising musician. So I would suggest that you follow me on Facebook or on Instagram, and I'll definitely announce it. I'll definitely announce it on video at some point as well. But that's something that I think could be very, very useful for many of you. But okay, let's continue. So all these articles, all these teachers telling you which scales to play over which chord, it is not wrong, but don't think that it's the only way to do things. Because again, a lot of these articles or teachers are not considering this whole harmonic fluidity. I'm so musically woke that I might become the next Canadian Prime Minister. Take that, Justin Trudeau. Guys, don't cancel me. Please, don't cancel it. I like making jokes. But harmonic fluidity has been in existence as early as when the first jazz musicians were improvising. Louis Armstrong, for example, when it's in the key of F, you have a C7 chord. Louis Armstrong liked to superimpose B flat minor over the C7 in his improvisation. Don't believe me? Check it out. So there we go. It does not consider that. And it goes back to my earlier point. It's more about the harmony than it is about the scales or arpeggios. For instance, if I wanted to, and I didn't, in my solo that you heard in the beginning, I could have played F, played some kind of idea over F, and play some kind of D7 to lead to G. You know, I could do something like something like that. I can superimpose different things. So then G7. Okay, so the person who wrote that article says it's incorrectly labeled as G mixolydian when it's to be G mixolydian to get that Brazilian sound. Those are two possible sounds that you can explore. And again, I'm not thinking really in terms of scale, but more in terms of harmony. So under what people would call quote unquote mixolydian harmony, it will be phrases like this. Or that's typical quote unquote, I don't use those terms, so that would be quote unquote mixolydian style phrasing. But again, I'm not thinking in terms of that. I'm just really thinking in terms of chords. It's semantics, I know, the words don't matter. Whereas if I had this sound, it would be more of this kind of vocabulary. But here is the thing, harmony is fluid. If you check out the old masters and still great players of today, they go from one to the other within the same phrase. So you can actually mix both of them. So it can be something like this. So that's the what do you call that? Lydian flat 7 sound. And then here's suddenly mixolydian. Back to the Lydian. Back to the Lydian. Mixolydian. That's very typical in the phrasing of a lot of old players. So that is proof that if you're going for the older style, it's not about just one scale. It's about how you choose to decorate the harmony. The main difference between mixolydian and Lydian flat 7 is this note. Instead of a C natural, you have a C sharp, but you can use both within the same phrase. Right? That's within the same phrase using both, and through the use of enclosures as well. So here are some little basic ideas to kind of sound in that, I guess, bebop-y style. So this kind of arpeggio, this sound. So if you notice that, you have an A minor inside the F. And that's a very, very typical sound in the style. So you can mix both. A minor. By the way, okay, let me just play. So that's one phrase where I combine A minor, then F major. I want to say another thing, is that when I play these things, I'm not thinking A minor, then F major. I see everything as one. And that's one of the other secrets of jazz improvisation, is this ability to see everything as much as possible as just one single unit. Kind of like Neo in the Matrix, when he just sees everything as being connected. And therefore, this thing, this Lydian flat 7 thing and the mixolydian, even though they are quote unquote different, for me, they are also as one. But in the beginning, I dropped my pick again, just like last week. But in the beginning, it's definitely okay to see them as separate things. But in my opinion, it would be ideal eventually just to simplify as much as possible. Because if you're thinking, okay, F major, I can play the 3rd degree, that's A major. By the time you figure out what that is, it's too late. And if you wanted to, you can have kind of a whole tone sound over the G7 as well. So then you can think F. harmonic fluidity. Then you have this G minor. And then what the chart says to be this. So then teachers will say, okay, here you play G Dorian. And here you play G flat Lydian flat. See, I don't even think in terms of. That is one possibility. Another possibility is to consider the original recording where it's just 2, 5, 1. So in your improvisation, you can just think G minor. So this is very typical in jazz, bebop. When you have a 2, 5, 1, or even just a 5 chord that lasts 2 bars, you can think G minor only. Try it out. I'll play C7 and play this idea. Try it out. This is a sound a lot of jazz musicians use. Wes was particularly fond of that sound. And again, according to teachers, it's a wrong sound. If you go to Berkeley, they call this, you're playing an avoid note at Berkeley. I think that's what they call it. And you're not supposed to play it because it's an avoid note. But Wes played it. A lot of the best jazz musicians played it. So are they playing wrong? They're the guys who actually created the style. So food for thought. Like I said, it's one of the different ingredients. Think of them as ingredients. One of the colors available to you, harmonic colors available to you. So think of yourself as a chef or a painter, and you choose which tools you want to use. If you want to go for that sound that I just described, let's call it the West sound. It's not the West didn't invent it, but he was fond of it. So over a C7, think G minor 7. And G minor 7 is the same as B flat 7. All as one. So that let's say you have a blues. Let's say a blues in F. You can be thinking C minor. So therefore E flat major. Wes Montgomery, George Benson, they are very fond of this sound. What if we combine the two? We're in a blues in F. And then even some jazz musicians push the boundaries a little bit. Okay, traditionally it's supposed to be this, but what if I turn this G minor into this, creating this C7 chord? Then you get this sound. All about decorating the chords. And then you have the turnaround. I suggest you check out my harmony course where I talk about the history of turnarounds. That's where you can do so many different things. So that's the A section of this song. And then the B section is where a lot of interesting things happen. So if you check out the original recording of this song, the very first time it was recorded, again, it was recorded in the key of D flat, but we're just doing everything in F here. So in F, the B part goes to this F sharp. Then it goes, I should have double checked before making this video. But I think in the original recording, it does F sharp minor. And then A minor, B flat minor. So it's basically major, minor, major, minor, major, minor in 3 different tonalities, so to speak. F sharp, A, then B flat. Most charts nowadays will say F sharp, major 7 to B9, F sharp minor 7 to D9, G minor 7 to E flat 9. They actually mean the same thing. The difference is very minimal. So, and like I said, whether you think of this as F sharp minor or A major, it doesn't in the end, it should not matter. In the beginning, use it as reference, but eventually everything should just be as one. But going back to the first chord, F sharp and B9, see B9 is the same as F sharp minor 9. I talk about this in my harmony course, why they're the same and how it evolved. Well, check it out. If we consider this to be the key of F sharp major, and this to be F sharp minor, it's only one note difference. Major, minor, minor. So essentially, you can be using almost all the same notes, but just changing one. This one to this. But again, if you're thinking in terms of scales, you don't want to be just randomly going up and down the scales. You want to be coherent. You want to be somewhat, well, if you want to play bebop, you want to be idiomatic. But even if you don't want to play bebop, you want to play your own style, I think trying to be melodically coherent is very, very important. And again, of course, that's very, when it comes to other styles, it's very subjective. But when it comes to bebop, you want to be playing phrases along the lines of this. Okay, that's the first, but then let's say we get to the B9. You want to be playing lines that sound like that. That's very, very coherent. And notice what I did, and that I don't remember what I played, but I mixed Mixolydian and Lydian flat 7, because basically you're playing Lydian flat 7 here. I know I call this a beginner course, and maybe you're not familiar with these terms, Lydian flat 7, Mixolydian. I'm making this video not to replace any teacher or not to teach you these scales, but to teach you the main point of this video is harmonic fluidity, harmonic direction, and the fact that things are not necessarily set in stone. That's what I want you to get out of this. But if you need someone to explain to you all these different scales and modes or whatever, even though I'm not thinking that way, you can find articles on the internet or teachers. There are other videos teaching this very well. So basically for the B section, you only have to learn one thing, how to play this. Improvise over this chord, because then it's repeated another 2 times. So you need to develop good vocabulary for this to this. Notice in what I just improvised here, I went in and out between what we were talking about earlier. Sorry. So this kind of F sharp minor major 7 sound and F sharp minor 7 sound. Or if we're talking about in terms of B7 with a sharp 11 or B7 with this natural 4. And then you have a turnaround to get us back to the A section. I think the chart might say this G flat 7, but originally it's just C7. Back to the F. So a lot of things to consider there. And now I want to talk about something else. The phrasing is very important. Phrasing can mean quite a number of different things. For example, where do you start on the beat? How you choose to connect chords. For example, if you look at the melody itself, which is something you should learn because there's a lot of useful stuff from it, notice that the melody, in terms of phrasing, is connecting the first 2 chords. It's the same phrase. But then the next 2 chords, it connects the next half. So that's very interesting, that kind of phrasing. So you can copy that phrasing for sure. So let's say an F idea, and I connect it to this chord. And then I end my phrase there. And then the next idea, and I connect the next half. So that's copying the phrasing of the melody, but you don't have to do that. You can, for example, come up with one idea over F. So for example, let's say, that's my idea. And then I have a new phrase. And I connected that phrase to G minor. I don't remember what I did. So I'll make another one. So I connected G7 to C7 with this sound in my phrasing. I hope you understand what I mean. So the same thing, the B section, the phrasing is connected that way in pairs as well. So this to this, this to this, and this to this. It goes like this, right? Right? So you can do that, or you can, for fun, you can connect this chord to this chord. So basically, we have this sound, and we want to get to here, to this sound. So it can be like this. Let me do that again. I don't remember what I played, but let's say this. And then we're gonna go to A. Then we have this chord, and we want to get to the G minor. There we go, G minor or B flat. So from this, so the phrasing can be how you choose to connect chords and which ones do you choose to connect. Check out the melody for lots of hints of what you can do, but you can also do the opposite of what the melody does. So you see there's a lot of possibilities. So check out my phrasing course on SoundSlice. It's very cool. Now let's talk about note choices. Again, we get so obsessed with the possibilities of scales and arpeggios. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's definitely one possibility, and a lot of teachers teach very, very well. But sometimes, remember, we're trying to play music, and therefore we want to play something that is quote-unquote artistic. What I'm getting at is many of us get so obsessed with scales that we end up playing like these long, myself included, long lines like, you know. But when in fact you can just play something simple. The melody is simple. And what's very interesting about the melody is that it's not targeting the obvious chord tones. It's not like, okay, F major, I better play the root, I better play the third, I better play the fifth. But no, it's just doing. And the G7 is doing the same thing. It's recycling the same material. So then you can go to another song that has a similar chord progression, like Take the A Train. So that's another thing. Try to find songs that have the same chord progressions or the same chord functions. So this F going to G7, you can find this in a lot of songs. There's an old song called Jersey Bounce. How does it go? Jersey Bounce. Check it out. Django played it. Ella Fitzgerald sang it. It's a very old standard. Most people don't play it nowadays, but it's a cool one. It has that chord progression as well. But There Will Never Be Another You has that also. Right here, in the end of the second half. The many songs. Slow Boat to China. So find other songs that have the same chord progression and recycle. And that's how you start to absorb the language. When you can truly see it as what it is in different contexts, that's when you know you understand how this harmony works. So I want to talk about that solo that I improvised for you in the beginning. I was recording, I practiced for a little bit because I wanted to incorporate certain things. So I must have practiced it for like at least a good 45 minutes, trying to think of different ideas. It's only one chorus, but I tried to keep it relatively varied to show different things. So I started with the melody, because it's totally cool to quote the melody in the song. You can also quote the melody to another song. You can do that Jersey bounce thing. You can totally be doing things like this. Right? Quote Jersey bounce. Okay, and then what did I do? I played the melody. Then I did this something like this. I remember, yeah. So I played this note, and I stopped there. So that would be that Lydian flat 7 sound. And here's the thing. See, when you think about scales, you think you'll be very tempted to go play the whole scale once you reach it. But I just stopped here. That's good enough. Leave some space. And then for the turnaround, I was thinking, despite what the rhythm section is doing. The rhythm section is playing F and this, but I am superimposing different sets of harmonies. Harmonic direction. And then the second A, I started playing bebop lines, whatever they were. I know for sure that on the G7 chord, I mixed ideas. Did I? I don't remember. I think I did. Okay, I don't remember what I did, but I definitely used this sound. Then I played another bebop phrase. I remember what I did. I did something like that, yeah. So typical bebop phrase. We're just outlining the chords as written on the sheet music. So the B section, I came up with a little motivic idea, whatever it may have been. Just think to this, and I just changed one note. Then I think I came up with some idea over this F sharp minor or A major. Nothing particularly special, really. And then I do remember what I did here. It was very interesting. I treated this as B flat major to B flat minor. So I just changed one note. Then this note. And I remember, instead of doing this, I changed two notes. So this became this, and this became this. So because I want to have this color. The scales, the teachers will tell you that you can't play this, you should be playing this, but just to show you that I can, I did it. What do you think? And then I played the melody. And at the end, nothing special, but at the end I superimposed that cool turnaround that I learned from the original recording. Isn't that great? Okay, I want to go back to the B section. In that article that person on Facebook had quoted, the author says that this to this is actually in the key of C sharp, sorry, or G flat, however you want to see it. D flat. And this is the 4 to 4 minor. In the article, the author made a mistake, actually. He made a typo. He meant to say D flat, but he wrote key of G flat, because he says this should be 4 and 4 minor. But here's the thing. Does it really matter? What's the difference between the key of D flat and G flat major? If we're talking just in terms of scales, which is not something that I think in terms of, but it's just a one note difference. If I have G flat, if I'm thinking in terms of key of D flat, you have this. And as I've demonstrated earlier, it's not about scales, it's how you choose to decorate the chords. So I could be playing a line that goes like this. It'll sound fine. I can also play a line that goes, but that doesn't sound in the style. It's not idiomatic to bebop. That's the kind of sound that I go for. So instead, if I want to use this sound, I would use it like this. There we go. That's more idiomatic. But here's the thing. So this person, the article says people are analyzing incorrectly. But how can you tell? Let me refute this simply by analyzing the melody to the song. The melody to the song goes like this. So Jobim is purposely avoiding certain notes. And these notes work both over G flat major and B7. So actually in your improvisation you can be that's another improvisation idea available to you. So the note that would have determined whether it's actually in the key of D flat or G flat is completely omitted. Unless Jobim himself distinctly said it's one or the other, there's no way to know. And in the end, semantically, it actually doesn't really change so much, because if you're thinking in terms of harmonic direction, what's really important is just going from this to this. It doesn't matter whether it's in the key of D flat or G flat. You don't really care about this note or that note, the one that makes it Lydian or Ionian. But let's entertain the idea that maybe it is Lydian, that Jobim specifically wrote it with a Lydian sound in mind. And that will be obvious if the melody had been if that were the melody. Then obviously, yes, you can definitely say that it is Lydian here. But that's for the melody, and therefore in your copy you can maybe comp with like this. You can do that kind of comping to really highlight it. But here's the thing, when it comes to soloing, it's open-ended. You choose how you want to interpret things. And so for the soloing, it could be that, or it could be other things as well. I talked about this some weeks ago, where I think it was Errol Garner recorded Cheek to Cheek. And if you look at the sheet music, Cheek to Cheek, it has all these passing chords. I don't remember if Errol Garner played those passing chords in his when he's playing the melody, but when he goes to the solo, I don't even remember if it was Errol Garner, so I could be wrong. It could be Red Garland, one of the two. But when it comes to the solo, the harmonies are greatly simplified, so he has more space to do different things. So that's super, super important. So the moral of this video, beware of what teachers say. It's not that it's necessarily wrong, but the way some of them talk, they try to talk in terms of rules, and it gives the impression to beginners that jazz is played only this one way. And then they get so confused when they start to actually analyze music for themselves, which is the case for me when I started listening by ear, and just, it's like, wait, everything I was taught, these guys are not doing it. They're doing the opposite. So that's the lesson I want to share with you in this video. If you really want to develop some bebop vocabulary, you need to listen to bebop players. Ultimately, if you want to have this freedom, as much freedom as possible in improvisation, you need to listen to a lot of music, to do a lot of thinking, to develop your ears, to hear different pathways available to you. And it's a lot of work for sure, but I think it's part of the journey. It's a lot of fun. I think a lot of people who are learning jazz, quote unquote learning jazz, they like the music school way, because the music school will tell you, all right, here's the scale, and boom, learn the scale, and that's it. I can play jazz. But jazz players know that's not the truth at all. It's like these proficiency exams. I know a lot of Asians they pass this the English proficiency exam with flying colors. Then they go to university in Canada or USA, and they can't speak English to save their lives, or they barely speak it. yet they scored very high in the proficiency test. It's the same thing. You can go to music school, score, get really good grades, know all your scales and everything, all your arpeggios, but you can, to put it simply, sound not good when you play jazz. How's that? Leave a comment. Check out my courses on SoundSlice or DC Music School. Thank you. Bye.